welcome back to our channel. In the vast machinery of American coinage, few details escape scrutiny. Year after year, billions of coins roll off the presses, each stamped with precision under the careful watch of mint technicians and automated systems. But even within this sea of perfection, anomalies find their way through. One such anomaly, small and copper-coated, emerged in 1984, a year marked by economic recovery and political tension, a year that unknowingly birthed a cent unlike most others. It didn't shout its uniqueness from the start. In fact, it mingled silently among millions of its kind, indistinct and unnoticed. The penny in question bore all the expected traits at first glance. Abraham Lincoln, stately and serene, faced rightward, just as he had since 1909. The date beneath him read, 1984, a subtle nod to both a historical minting and an Orwellian year for numismatic intrigue. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stood tall, flanked by the familiar words, United States of America, and E pluribus unum. Yet, under magnification and a collector's trained eye, the harmony of the design was disrupted. Something was off. Not grotesquely, not glaringly, but certainly, undeniably, different. Decades after its creation, nestled deep in a collector's hoard of Lincoln cents, it was a keen-eyed hobbyist who pulled it from obscurity. At first, it was just another penny to sort through, a labor of love undertaken by many who seek the thrill of a hidden gem. The collector, a retired mechanical engineer with an eye for symmetry and structure, noticed an inconsistency in Lincoln's profile. Something tugged at the edges of perception. A small bump, a distortion. The ear. It was Lincoln's ear that whispered the first clue. The right ear on the 1984 cent appeared, doubled. Not mirrored, not merely thickened, doubled. A faint but deliberate duplication of the lobe, as if the image had shifted slightly during the strike and then reset. It wasn't just wear. It wasn't damage. It was a mint-made anomaly, a doubled die. The collector's breath slowed. He knew, instantly, that this was no ordinary find. Doubling errors occurred rarely and, when they did, they could turn an otherwise worthless cent into an artifact of immense value. But how did it happen? In the U.S. Mint's die creation process, a master hub imprints its design onto a working die multiple times. If the hub and die are misaligned during one of these impressions, ever so slightly, a doubling effect can occur. Normally, such errors are caught early. But in 1984, one die bearing Lincoln's doubled ear escaped quality control. It was used, briefly, it seems, to strike a number of coins before being retired or corrected. The resulting cents trickled out into circulation with no fanfare. The collector, both awed and skeptical, needed confirmation. He turned to magnification, digital comparison, and reference materials. And then, eventually, he reached out to a numismatic expert. The verdict came back swiftly, definitively, 1984 double die cent. A known but rare error. One of the most prominent doubling errors since the 1955 Lincoln cent. The discovery marked a turning point in the coin's journey, from obscurity to recognition. But even now, its true worth remained cloaked in mystery. Market dynamics in numismatics are notoriously fickle. Rarity alone does not guarantee value. A coin must also carry allure, provenance, and story. At first, the 1984 double die penny fetched modest sums. $2,500, maybe $5,000, depending on condition. But as word spread through collector circles and articles began appearing in trade magazines, the mystique grew. This wasn't just any error, it was one visible to the naked eye, yet subtle enough to slip past millions. And it had done so for years. Prices climbed. By the early 2000s, certified mint state examples began trading for hundreds. By the 2010s, auctions saw fierce bidding wars over pristine specimens. Coin shows featured it prominently. Dealers marketed it aggressively. The doubling on Lincoln's ear became iconic, a symbol of hidden value in plain sight. Still, few could anticipate the spike that came next. One specimen, graded MS-67 red by a top-tier grading service, surfaced at a major auction in 2021. Bidders recognized its near-perfect luster, its razor-sharp strike, its undeniable doubling. The final hammer price stunned even seasoned experts. It soared past 5 figures. Collectors took note. Suddenly, the market was ablaze with renewed interest in 1984 cents. Thousands dug through change jars, red folders, old albums, hoping for lightning to strike again, but there was more to the story than even the experts knew. Another specimen, discovered in 2023, revealed a new wrinkle. Not only was the ear doubled, subtly, elegantly, but there were faint signs of doubling on the date itself. Not enough to warrant classification as a new variety, but enough to stir debate among die-hard specialists. Could there have been more than one double die used? Was there an undiscovered companion variety lurking in circulation? The twist deepened when a numismatist unearthed an internal memo from the Philadelphia Mint, dated late 1984. It referenced concerns about die fatigue and a suspected, abnormal impression, on one of the Lincoln dies. The memo was vague, bureaucratic, but tantalizing. Had the Mint known? Had they quietly retired the die to avoid embarrassment? Collectors began poring over Mint reports, shipment records, even security logs, searching for confirmation. Theories abounded. One suggested the doubling resulted not from a standard hubbing error, but from a misaligned punch adjustment during a hurried die replacement. Another speculated that a rogue technician, aware of the potential for fame, allowed the error to persist intentionally. While unverifiable, such rumors only added fuel to the fire. The coin's allure became multi-layered. It was no longer just a mechanical anomaly. It was a mystery, a narrative, a question mark inked into copper. Its existence challenged assumptions about mint perfection. It invited scrutiny, speculation, and, inevitably, desire. As more examples surfaced and were authenticated, a clearer picture emerged. The total number of genuine 1984 doubled ear cents in high grade remained low, perhaps a few hundred, maybe less. Lower grade examples were more common, but even they carried premium value. Collectors cherished them not only for their rarity, but for what they represented: discovery. Every 1984 double die was a trophy, proof that the tiniest deviations could still slip through the cracks of an industrial process designed for absolute consistency. The penny, born into anonymity, rose steadily in prestige. Today, even uncirculated examples in lesser mint states command several $100s. The MS-67 specimen? It remains a benchmark, its price whispered among dealers like a fabled relic, and still, questions linger. Why was the ear affected and not the rest of Lincoln's profile? Why were no official reports released confirming the mistake? Were there more dies with similar errors that simply haven't been found yet? Could a new variety still emerge, hidden away in a coffee can or an attic drawer? These questions sustain the legend, and with each passing year, the 1984 double die cent inches closer to the pantheon of error coin royalty. It doesn't boast the drama of the 1955 double die's wild doubling. It lacks the chaos of the 1999 wide AM reverse. Yet in its quiet imperfection, it holds a singular place, a penny that caught the eye, challenged the mint, and rewarded those who refused to stop looking. Somewhere, in the folds of daily transactions, perhaps another waits. Unseen. Unappreciated. Until the next collector, half distracted and wholly curious, sees past the copper sheen and hears the whisper in the lobe of Lincoln's ear. A whisper of error, of value, of story. The 1996 US 1-cent coin began its life like countless others, pressed into existence at the US Mint, a product of high-speed dies, copper-plated zinc, and industrial efficiency. The year itself felt unremarkable from a numismatic standpoint. Circulation coins were being produced in vast quantities, with billions of pennies minted at Philadelphia and Denver alone. And among them, one coin bore a quiet difference. Hidden beneath the layers of repetition and overlooked details, there was no immediate sign that this coin would one day raise eyebrows or turn heads. It traveled in pockets, passed through hands, rode along in forgotten piggy banks, and vanished into the clink of cash drawers. It was a coin that knew motion, not attention. But even so, embedded in its surface was an aberration, a flaw too precise to be accidental yet too subtle to shout. It was only years later, long after the coin had faded into obscurity, that a collector named Raymond stumbled across it in a plastic tub of sordid cents. He was no stranger to errors. his collection focused on the irregularities that emerged when machines faltered. For him, each search was a ritual. Under a strong lamp and magnification, he passed his eyes over every detail. Lincoln's bust. The date. The legend. And then he stopped. The word "Liberty" caught his eye. The letters, normally crisp and uniformly spaced, appeared disturbed. Not all of them, just a few. The B and the D showed signs of doubling. A wavering outline clung to the edges like a shadow following too closely. His breath caught. It wasn't the common machine doubling caused by vibrations. This was stronger, deeper, indicative of a double die. The thrill of the unknown settled into his chest. He compared it to known examples. No, this didn't match the infamous 1995 double die, the one so many were familiar with. This was something else. Something undocumented. He turned to Lincoln's eye, and again, he saw the faint doubling of the eyelid, a barely perceptible second ridge tracing its edge. His hands trembled as he placed the coin into a flip and marked it for further study. It took weeks, and consultations with numismatists, before the answer came back. This was a legitimate double die from 1996. A rare misalignment during the hubbing process had created a new anomaly, an error that had gone unnoticed for decades. It wasn't widely published. It wasn't yet catalogued in every guide. But the confirmation was clear. Raymond had discovered one of the few documented 1996 Lincoln cent double dies. Suddenly, a coin worth 1 cent had become a riddle worth solving. The community buzzed. Some experts had heard whispers of 1996 anomalies but dismissed them as minor. This coin challenged that view. As images spread across forums and collector circles, the coin gained momentum. Comparisons were made. Could it rival the legendary 1955 or 1983 cents? Was it a fleeting error or part of a small batch? Raymond's find became the focus of speculation. Other collectors began combing through their stashes, hoping to uncover a match. A few did. Slowly, a pattern emerged. It appeared the doubling affected a small number of coins minted at the Philadelphia facility. No one knew exactly how many were out there. Estimates were vague, perhaps a few hundred, most of which had likely slipped into circulation unnoticed and worn down over time. What made the 1996 double die cent so compelling wasn't just the doubling, it was the timing. Coming just 1 year after the highly publicized 1995 double die, this error had somehow slipped under the radar. The mint had been under intense scrutiny. Quality control had improved. Yet this coin, as if daring the system, managed to escape unnoticed. It was almost poetic. Raymond, who initially thought the coin might fetch a few $100s, was stunned when a private offer came through. A fellow collector, captivated by the doubling on Liberty and Lincoln's eye, offered $4,000 on the spot. He declined. He believed its value would grow. And it did. As word spread, certified examples began appearing at auctions. Grading services authenticated and encapsulated them, noting the distinct doubling features. Prices climbed. A few sold for $8,000. Then $12,000. One particularly lustrous example, graded MS66 red, fetched over $19,000 at a major online auction. By 2021, the coin had become one of the most discussed Lincoln cent errors of the late 20th century. What began as a quiet find turned into a resounding revelation, a reminder that even in an age of mass production and digital scanning, human eyes still uncovered the treasures machines missed. Then came the twist. In 2022, a new discovery changed everything. A collector from Ohio claimed to find another 1996 double die penny, but this one was different. The doubling was present, yes, but in a new location. The date, 1996, itself showed faint doubling on the 9 and the 6, and more intriguingly, the reverse of the coin bore slight notching on the base of the Lincoln Memorial. Experts were baffled. Was this a second variety? A previously undiscovered die pair? Or was it evidence that the 1996 double die wasn't a one-off, but part of a systemic issue that went undetected? Numismatic forums lit up with side-by-side comparisons. Some argued it was a new variety entirely. Others speculated it might have been caused by a different type of hubbing issue. A few remained skeptical. But the presence of multiple coins with variations of doubling pushed the market into speculative overdrive. The result was a surge in both interest and value. Dealers began actively advertising 1996 Lincoln cents, urging customers to check their change, their collections, their childhood jars. Some even issued guides on how to identify the doubling. New finds trickled in, most in circulated condition, but still commanding hundreds of dollars. Uncirculated examples remained rare. The value trajectory, once gradual, now skyrocketed. Auction houses saw bidding wars erupt over high-grade examples. One MS-67 red specimen, remarkable for its clean surfaces and sharp strike, sold for an astonishing $45,000. That moment marked a turning point. The coin was no longer a niche error, it was a heavyweight. In the following months, other high-grade coins achieved similar prices. One particularly well-documented example, accompanied by expert commentary and provenance tracing it back to Raymond's original discovery, sold for $110,000 to a private collector, and yet, even with this recognition, the 1996 double die cent retains an aura of secrecy. Unlike other famous errors, it remains relatively unknown to the general public. It hasn't yet reached the pop culture status of the 1943 copper penny or the 1909 SVDB. But that may be part of its charm. For those in the know, it is a quiet icon, an insider's coin. As more collectors join the hunt and more examples surface, the mystery of how many were truly minted may one day be solved. Or perhaps not. Maybe the magic lies in never knowing exactly how many escaped into circulation, only that they did, and that somewhere out there, one might still be waiting, hidden in a drawer. Lost in a pile. Or turning in someone's hand as they pay for coffee. A coin worth 1 cent, unless it's the right one. The 1996 US 1 cent double die error, now known to sell between $45,000 and $110,000, continues to capture imaginations not because it's loud, but because it whispers. And those who listen closely are the ones who find it. At the dawn of a new millennium, when the world buzzed with talk of Y2K and a digital future, the US Mint pressed forward with a task it had perfected for centuries, striking coins that would quietly carry the nation's legacy into pockets and purses. Among the most abundant of these was the humble 1 cent piece, the Lincoln cent, whose familiar coppery tone continued to reflect both continuity and economy. Billions were minted in 2000, coins so common they were barely noticed. And yet, in the flood of uniformity, one coin escaped perfection. No one at the Philadelphia Mint realized anything had gone wrong. The machinery hummed in rhythm, stamping dies into blanks with industrial efficiency. There were no reports of major errors, no red flags raised. But somewhere along the way, one die bore a defect. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't mar the coin structure or render it unrecognizable. It whispered its presence subtly, in the shadows of letters, in the slight repetition of design elements that should have stood alone. Years passed. It was a collector in Michigan, sorting through bank-wrapped rolls for fun, who noticed the deviation. He had no specific expectations, he simply enjoyed the meditative repetition of the hunt. His eyes had scanned hundreds of coins already that week, but this one gave him pause. The word Liberty, stamped proudly left of Lincoln's profile, wasn't quite right. The letters weren't doubled in the way cheap fakes appear. Instead, they shimmered, edges of extra contours where there should have been only one clear line. He turned the coin over and examined the date, 2000. His fingers tightened. The first, 0, had the faintest trace of a ghostly twin. It wasn't mechanical doubling. It was more deliberate, more layered. He flipped the coin back over, tilted it under his desk lamp, and confirmed what his instincts had suggested: this was a double die, and a good one. With caution and excitement competing in his chest, he submitted the coin to a leading grading service. Weeks passed. When the slab finally arrived, the label inside confirmed it: 2000 Lincoln cent double die obverse. The collector had discovered one of the rarest and least known double dies from the post-1990 era. And suddenly, this forgotten coin from a roll destined for the mundane had transformed into something entirely different. The doubling on the coin was subtle, but precise. It affected the motto, "In God We Trust," with a ghosting on the tops of the letters, and a distinct second ridge could be seen beneath Lincoln's eye. Even the designer's initials, VDB, tucked at the shoulder of Lincoln, displayed light but undeniable layering. This wasn't a circulation flaw. It wasn't the result of damage. It was an error born in the minting process, during the die hubbing stage where a misalignment had created a secondary impression on the working die. The discovery didn't erupt into headlines. Not right away. The year 2000 wasn't known for Lincoln cent anomalies, and few collectors had been paying attention to 1-cent coins from such a recent date. But word traveled quietly through the forums and collector networks. A few more examples were uncovered, mostly in circulated condition, worn, slightly corroded, bearing the usual signs of life in the wild. But the doubling was consistent, and the rarity cleared at it wasn't long before the first certified mint state specimen hit an auction floor. Bidders approached cautiously at first. The 2000 double die didn't yet have the name recognition of the 1955, or the 1995, or even the 1983 double dies. But its crisp design, modern vintage, and scarcity made it attractive. The price surpassed expectations. Over $6,000 for the first MS-65 red coin. The market stirred, then came the second wave. A young collector from Arizona revealed an uncirculated example with unusually deep luster. The coin had been preserved since pocket change days, found by his grandfather and stored in a protective capsule simply because it looked weird. When submitted for grading, it came back as MS-67 red, a superb grade for any Lincoln cent, especially one with a doubling anomaly. The auction for that specimen was swift and fierce. Collectors recognized its importance. Dealers recognized its potential. And when the gavel fell, the final price stunned observers. $38,000. Not the highest price ever seen for an error penny, but it set a benchmark. The 2000 double die was no longer a secret. It was a contender, and yet, even then, not all was known. Months later, another specimen appeared, but this time with a twist. The doubling was more aggressive. The entire Liberty was shadowed, not just the B or E. Even Lincoln's bowtie seemed thicker, bulkier, with hints of a doubled outline. The reverse, too, showed a faint irregularity, slight doubling along the base of the Lincoln Memorial steps. Experts debated. Was this a separate double die variety? Or was it a progression, a later strike from a die degrading under pressure? What couldn't be denied was the coin's uniqueness. The specimen, submitted anonymously and graded MS-66, sold privately for $51,000. Rumors swirled that the buyer was a high-profile collector assembling a set of modern double dies from each decade. The interest created a ripple effect. More coins were discovered. Some turned out to be standard issues, falsely identified. Others, genuine errors, were snapped up quickly before the broader market caught on. Unlike errors from the early 20th century, the 2000 double die cent remains cloaked in relative modern anonymity. It's a treasure still overlooked by casual collectors and often mistaken for common wear. That's part of its magic. Its value isn't just in the doubling. It's in the fact that the doubling went unnoticed in the digital age, when machines and data were supposed to catch everything. Today, the coin exists in small numbers, most in circulated grades, and only a few known examples in pristine condition. Those that survive in mint state red command powerful prices. The few MS-66 and MS-67 examples are traded behind closed doors, between elite collectors, or during discreet private sales. Some estimates place the top-end value of such coins between $40,000 and $99,000. And as with all great errors, the full story may still be unfolding. Perhaps there are still rolls hiding in vaults, or cigar boxes tucked away in basements, holding another perfect example. Perhaps the mint's own records contain unexplored documentation on die usage from that year. Or maybe this error will remain a tantalizing whisper in the vast field of numismatics, proof that even in the most automated systems, human eyes are still the most valuable tool of discovery. A penny minted in the age of data, worth a fortune because of a flaw. A reminder that even the smallest coins carry secrets. And in the case of the 2000 US 1-cent penny, those secrets now carry a value from $40,000 to $99,000, depending only on how well they've been preserved, and how long they've stayed hidden. In 2006, as the United States stood on the edge of economic transformation and digital acceleration, the U.S. Mint continued its age-old rhythm of coin production. The familiar face of Abraham Lincoln pressed onto copper-plated zinc surfaces remained a staple of everyday transactions. That year, over 8 billion Lincoln cents were struck. To the average person, each coin looked identical, common, ordinary, expendable. But nestled among those billions was an anomaly so precise, so expertly masked by routine, that it evaded attention for years. There was no announcement, no raised flags, no headlines about a minting error. The dies had been properly prepared, the presses finely tuned, and the 2006 cent had been widely circulated with minimal fanfare. But perfection, even in mass production, is never absolute. One coin emerged slightly off balance, its details just misaligned enough to cast a subtle shadow of imperfection. An error, invisible at a glance, but undeniable under scrutiny. It took time, months, even years, for a single example to find its way into the hands of someone who would recognize it for what it was. A retired machinist turned hobbyist, living in Colorado, sifted through a jar of loose change on a winter afternoon. He didn't expect anything beyond a few wheat cents, maybe a Canadian penny or two. But something about one coin pulled him in. The 2006 date looked clean at first. Then he tilted it beneath the light and something shifted. The "In God We Trust" motto displayed a strange doubling along the tops of the letters. Not just blurry edges, but distinct lines stacked ever so slightly out of place. He looked closer. Lincoln's eye had a faint trace of a second eyelid, barely visible but undeniably there. The word "Liberty," too, wavered in its outline. He knew about doubling. He'd seen machine doubling, where a loose die caused vibrational echoes. But this was sharper, more deliberate. A doubled die, he suspected. And a new one, at that. Uncertain but hopeful, he packaged the coin and sent it to a grading authority. When it returned weeks later in a clear slab labeled 2006 Lincoln cent, double die obverse, his instincts were confirmed. It was real. A rare misalignment had occurred during the hubbing process at the Philadelphia Mint. One of the dies used to strike the obverse design had received a doubled impression during preparation, an error that resulted in a minute but measurable shift in key design elements. The coin, previously worth a single cent, had changed entirely. Word spread slowly. Unlike more dramatic errors with off-center strikes or clipped planchets, this doubling was subtle. It demanded a discerning eye. Collectors who had initially dismissed the 2006 cents as unremarkable began to take another look. Online forums and coin communities lit up with discussions. A few more examples began to surface, one from a coin roll searcher in Oregon, another from a dealer's junk box in Texas. Most were circulated. Worn down, faded, but still retaining the distinctive markers. The doubling remained consistent, the motto, the I, the letters of "Liberty," and occasionally, the tops of the numerals in the date. Each confirmation added legitimacy to the discovery. It was no fluke. It was a legitimate double die variety from a modern mintage year, and it had gone undetected for far too long. As the numismatic community caught on, grading services began receiving more submissions. High-grade specimens, especially those with red surfaces and no contact marks, became the prize. The market for modern-era coins had already been growing, and the 2006 cent provided a perfect combination of rarity and contemporary appeal. The first public auction of a certified mint state 66 red 2006 double die cent brought in a surprising $14,000, far more than most experts anticipated. Then, another, slightly finer in luster and struck with exceptional detail, reached $21,000. The momentum had begun. And the more collectors searched, the clearer it became, these coins were truly scarce in high grades. While billions of 2006 cents existed, only a handful showed the specific doubling of this variety. In 2020, a breakthrough occurred. A collector from Florida revealed an MS-67 red example with full cartwheel luster and immaculate surfaces. It was described by the grading service as one of the finest known. In a heated auction, the coin drew bids from around the world. The final hammer fell at $56,000, solidifying the coin's place among the most valuable modern cent errors. But then came a twist. Another coin, discovered in an unsearched roll from a small-town estate sale, displayed the same obverse doubling, but also a subtle anomaly on the reverse. The designer initials, FG, beneath the Lincoln memorial appeared doubled, a feature previously undocumented for this error. Experts debated whether this was a new stage of the same double die, or an entirely separate die variety created during the same period. Regardless of the classification, the effect was dramatic. That specimen, once authenticated, sparked new interest. Collectors began exploring the idea that the 2006 double die wasn't a single variety, but potentially part of a broader group of minting errors from that year, errors that had slipped through unnoticed due to their precision and subtlety. Some coins showed faint doubling on Lincoln's shoulder, others along the left base of the memorial columns on the reverse. None were exactly alike. This development pushed prices even higher. It wasn't just about owning a double die anymore, it was about owning a version of a story still unfolding. Collectors who had once ignored modern pennies were now searching obsessively through their holdings, desperate to find another MS-67 example or a new twist to the growing list of 2006 anomalies. Despite the attention, the overall population of confirmed double die specimens remained low. Circulated examples changed hands for hundreds, sometimes thousands. High-grade coins, especially those graded MS-66 red or better, rarely appeared on the open market. When they did, they became instant highlights. A particularly lustrous example, verified to be from the original die pair and graded MS-67+, sold at a private numismatic convention in 2023 for $88,000, setting the current record for the variety. The coin's provenance traced back to one of the earliest discoverers, and its near-perfect preservation made it a benchmark piece. Collectors now watch 2006 pennies with reverence. They are no longer background noise in the world of error coins. They are a reminder that even at the height of modern production standards, imperfection finds a way. Not through catastrophe or oversight, but through the quiet slippage of alignment, a ghost image that turns a cent into a legend. And so, the 2006 US 1-cent penny with the double die obverse now holds a place among modern rarities. A coin born in silence, elevated by persistence, and defined by discovery. Its current market value ranges from $32,000 to $88,000, depending on condition, clarity, and the sharpness of the doubling. A coin once tossed into jars and drawers now commands the attention of the numismatic elite, not for what it was meant to be, but for what it accidentally became.